First of all, I thank everybody for getting that working. My trusty AV guy, Steve Vetter, is tied up this morning, so I appreciate the help. I do not know how to operate it. I guess I ought to learn. At any rate, let's get started. At the end of last meeting, I was a little oversensitive with a comment that was made at the end of the meeting, and I want to straighten some of that out without too much fanfare and indignation. What hit me was an inference of fear mongering, and then 4 days after that, a note went out to the entire group, talked about the alarmist attitude of the group, and it was directed to me. That's a misconception, and I sent to the couple of people who were involved in that and offered to meet with them, which did not happen. That review the YouTube of the meeting on the 15th. And if you did, you'll see that I opened that up and referred to the conference that I had gone to in Bloomington, that this co-op is in a honeymoon stage, if you will, with our reserves. We are overfunded. I want to emphasize that, overfunded almost through 10 years. So to suggest that there is an alarmist attitude or fear mongering is simply not correct. I want you to leave this meeting understanding, as much as I talked about, and Sandy will recall, and some of the others that went to the meeting, I sat at a meeting one afternoon with 7 different finance managers throughout from the group, and there are a lot of co-ops that are in trouble. This is not one of them. We are overfunded and we are in excellent shape. And that's because of this group. What called your attention that this is my 5th meeting to chair. I went into this last year as this was my first rodeo, but fortunately we have a guy sitting next to me, Dan Saul, that it is not his first rodeo. And this is a complicated program, and we went through it. And with the effort of this group, we and our cooperative in general, who supports strong reserves, we're beyond in good shape. Having said that, I want to give you a little bit of an analogy of where I think we are as well. If you recall, when we had the recession of whether it's 2007 or 2008 was the worst recession in going all the way back to the 30s. Ford Motor Company got ahead of the game early on. Their CEO pared down their offerings, tightened things up. They went and got a $22 billion credit line before credit dried up, and they went through it without taking a penny out of the national conference or out of the national coffers. There's been books written about that, but the analogy I want to bring to your attention is that one of the books that was written on that recession, what Ford Motor, if you might recall, Chrysler and GM got bailed out. Ford did not. They didn't need to and came out of it stronger. And the line that I want to mention to you, they made their own luck. And that's what I think we do in this reserve study. You make your own luck. So if you stay in front of that, you won't have that problem. So consequently, I want you to keep that in mind. If you go back and look at the minutes of the 5 meetings that I have chaired, I never voted once. And the reason is that I reserved my vote for breaking ties. All of the votes were unanimous for all 5 meetings. Never made a motion, never seconded, never had to vote. They were all unanimous. So going forward, I'll hope you keep some of that in mind. I hope you leave this meeting this afternoon knowing that Applewood, Eagan is beyond in good shape. Having said all of that, I would like to call the meeting to order a little bit late, 10 after the hour. I first of all want to thank Kathy Mielke for taking the minutes the last meeting, and also want to introduce not only Dan to my left, but John Belter. He'll be our secretary for this meeting. There are handouts, and the pretty ones in color went to the group here. There's additional ones out that are black and white, have some of the information. Shortly after the meeting that we had on the 15th, there were some questions on the equipment that was moved to the outside, when it was paid for, where it fell in terms of what they affected our reserves. So I set up a Zoom meeting with Dan, myself, Sandy, and Tom Kopachik, and we went through that, and we redid some of those, and have got those. And Dan's going to go into this in detail when we get to it. But we straightened some of that things out, which then led to the scenarios that you have in front of you today that we'll try to explain, and hopefully we'll be able to come to a conclusion. The goal today is, if we can, is to get a resolution on the table that we would forward to the board of directors to adopt, and we call this over, if you will. If that doesn't happen, we'll have to schedule another meeting and tie it up. I think there's a possibility that we can do just that. I'd like to start with a roll call of the members present. I'm Ben Coons. I'm chair of the Finance Committee, and at my side, turned on.
Harvey Larson, R&R.
Mary Ann Fletcher, R&R.
Stephen Stemig, board liaison.
Joe
Fitzharris, Building Committee.
Sandy Thompson, liaison.
Jennifer Rutschke, property manager.
Ross Dempsey, Grounds.
We introduced John and Dan. I'd like to, the agenda I sent out is relatively simple and straightforward, but I would like to get a motion to approve the agenda as is presented. If there's anything that anybody wants to add, now would be the time to do that. And a move in a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. So ordered. It's not noted on here that to approve the minutes, but I would like to do that as well. They are posted. If you go to the members website, you can find that under finance, and then under minutes, it is posted. I think they were quite thorough, but I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes as distributed. I have a motion. Have a second. Have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. That is so ordered. You're going to get this over to Dan and explain some of the components of not only what we're trying to do here, but the two scenarios. Those scenarios are in your handouts. They're a little hard to follow. We'll explain a couple of those, but it is actually the second page in that has the percentages and gives you the years out that they differ. At first glance, they'll look like they're the same, but they are in fact different for the two different scenarios. And Dan can explain where those what those differences are. And there's a couple of changes that you can make on those that'll maybe better explain that. This report is 34 pages long, so you only got printed the first 2 or 3 pages, including that graph as well. Having said that, I'm going to get the microphone to Dan, and he can explain a little bit further.
Thank you. So let's talk about the one that has upper left-hand corner says 2024 update draft 2 scenario 1. Sounds like a Bible verse, chapter 12, verse 30. This one I want to go through with you. Once you understand this one, the next option will be easier to understand. So what I've done here is, after the meeting, took all the changes that were asked of me, I think this includes the GE appliances, changed over from Whirlpool to Whirlpool. I'm sorry, the other one. Okay, that's better. Thank you. So that's really the big change in there. A couple minor changes, from what I recall, just in quantities and that type of thing. So we're on draft 2. We had talked about draft 1 at the last meeting. So in this front page here, we've got the beginning balance of 842,009 on the right blue box. And the breakdown is just below it there. We have our replacement balance as of 4/31, which is when this was done, that was the latest financial available. So basically added 8 more months at the 11,010 per month. The supplemental, same thing. It was 224,672 and had there 8 more months at 3,333. Then there was a transfer from the general operating at the end of the year, which will be at the end of 23. It's actually a future thing. And the estimated number to be brought over is $50,000. So that's an addition to your balance. Less the nitrogen generator, which is going to be, or probably has been paid at 21,500. And so you're expected to begin 2024 with 842,009. That's all pretty easy. And then you're budgeted for next year. We have the replacement reserve of 11,010 a month, which basically is the HUD money, the hush money, I call it, to keep them quiet. So that pretty much stays the same all the time. And then supplemental, you're expected to put in 40,000 annually. So annually, the amount put in is 172,120. Down at the bottom, I always refer to this, and it means something, but you have to take it in your own context. It says required monthly contribution. And under that, it says 149.41 per month. So that is just a quick down and dirty calculation, taking the 172,120 annually and divide it by 96 units. And it isn't based on percent of ownership. It's just a quick division to see where you are. And I can tell you that for a comparison of other buildings under 100 units, and that number is $135. So you're at 149. That's fine. It's very good. I always urge people to be above that median, and there's many that are below that. So that's where we are. If you go to the next page after that, we have this is where we kind of see where we're going. This is money in, money out, 30 years spreadsheet, 842,000 in the upper left, 009 is beginning balance, 172,120 annual contribution for 2024 and beyond, no change. This is really, you look at that and say, if we don't increase fees, this is kind of what's going to happen. Not exactly, but pretty close. So yes, in 2024, you're 125% funded because you have no expenditures and you don't have any in that column, 1, 2, 3, 4th column from the left, annual expenditures. There really isn't anything. There has been, there were no planned expenditures or a lot of surprises. But actually, when you look at this, you're still doing pretty well considering what came up. So until 2029, there are no annual expenditures scheduled. Again, when we do an annual update, we always look forward and see if there is something that's going to come up and we have to adjust that. So keep your fingers crossed. This is it is the honeymoon stage. So you're at 125% funded, and then that continues to drop a little bit because the cost of everything is going up. It's inflated. But your contribution is this flat for 30 years. It just can't be that way. And you continue to drop off. Now, going above 100% funded is normal. It's really what you have to do. It's kind of like, I don't know how to explain that, but you have to get more money than you need because it's going to start tapering off as time goes by. So look it down. I recommend staying above 75%, and 2037, you drop below that and continue to drop until you get into a negative situation in 2044. Still isn't a bad thing because I always, my comment is pay attention to the next 15 years, not the next 30, because we don't know what's going to happen between now and then. So for the next 15, you're doing well, although there's a trend to lose money after, or be a little bit less financially stable after that. So being overfunded doesn't mean you should give money back to the membership and cut the fees and all of that. That just means you're doing well. That's the way to go. So you're overfunded for a while, and then it starts to drop off and it tapers off. And again, unless you raise your fees, that'll continue on. You can slow that down with increased fees on the answer contribution. And that's something, there are decisions that are made as time goes on. So let's look at the other one, which is way in the back here. Well, I guess it's the next page around. This one's just called Update Draft 2. This is an option. And I'm going to ask Sandy at some point here to explain something. But so this is the same as everything else. We have a 842,009 beginning balance, and the breakdown is the same, that GOR 50,000. The only difference here is in future years, 24, 25 and beyond. Let's look at the next page. You'll see a difference here of $10,000 a year, an additional $10,000. What Sandy's suggesting and is to take 50,000 from the general operating at the end of the year of excess funds and transfer them into supplemental. Part of that would to be, right now you're putting 40,000 in supplemental. The thought is to reduce the fees by 40,000 a year, but you're actually bringing in, you're covering that 40 in the 50 that you're transferring plus an additional 10. So it's an increase of 10 per year. However, the membership the fees would drop from that. So Sandy, that was your thought. Did I say that right? Is that any clarification needed?
Well, I hadn't thought it through that thoroughly, but in my mind, the 50,000 was not replacing the 40.
Okay, all right.
But this, and for sure, I wasn't thinking fees reduced.
Okay, that's fine. Then I misspoke. I thought that was a replacement of part of that. So that's fine.
No,
Okay.
and this is that whole thing that's sort of being debated
Okay.
still, whether we can do this or not.
Well, let's look at it as if you can do that, and then you can research that beyond that. But if you look on the next page here, we see an increase of $10,000 per year, every year. It does wonders for your replacement reserve. When you look down the list, you're, my goodness, 75% into the, what's that, 25th year or so.
Can I ask real quick before you
Sure.
go on?
Yeah.
Is the $50,000 is a one-time
Each year,
each year?
each year.
Okay. And then in addition to that, we're raising the fees 10.
No, we're not. And actually the breakdown would be, see, that would make the breakdown different, Sandy, because then it'd be additional 50,000 on top of that, which would be
neutral.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
which is actually more money than you need to do. So, I mean, we actually need to rethink this a little bit. We need to rerun it. Okay. So I guess in this scenario or this option, we need to tweak this a little bit and clarify, but there is, you could transfer $10,000 every year and not have to worry.
Can I just say,
Yeah.
forget what I said before and go with what you were saying? No, I just hadn't thought it through.
And the way I look at it, to answer your question, is that the one scenario is a one-time shot. The other scenario is doing it automatically yearly. And there's the difference. If you did it one time now, that would not preclude you from next year voting to do it again, but you'd have to do it every year subsequently. So this scenario, you're saying you're going to start it next year and you're just going to move it forward.
What's confusing me is that the annual contribution on the second example is only increasing by $10,000 a year. And what you said made me think it should go up by 60,000. Oh,
50,000.
50, but you said 50 from the general operating reserve plus 10 in the form
No.
of fee, and one or the other?
my thought was that we're gonna reduce the 40,000 supplemental, and that would 40 of that would be recovered in the 50 plus an additional 10. So the 40 would make it the same and the 10 would be an additional 10 each year.
Okay, I'll work on it.
Yeah, I think we all have to work on that a little bit now that Sandy's really thinking it through, and I saw the light bulb above your head go on. And when we looked at that, so this is just an option, but actually you could look at it as just bringing 10,000 over from GOR every year, and that's what you'd see here. It wouldn't, your fees wouldn't increase. There's no increase in fees. Everybody's applauding. I can see them on TV. Yeah.
Of course, that assumes that you don't need the operating
Right.
reserve for a tornado or something.
Correct.
And
yeah.
that, in the back of my mind is we don't have in our budget a spot for emergencies, disasters.
That's right.
There's no contingency money.
Well,
And
the
so-
supplemental reserve is a contingency.
Yeah,
Well,
it-
in actuality, when we did have an unexpected disaster, it was charged to an account where there was no budget for that disaster.
You-
So, but we'll iron that out
Yeah.
when we do the
You
budget.
can also build a contingency into the supplemental if you like.
I just wanted to point out here, if we do annually withdraw $50,000 from the GOR, it still increases by more than $20,000 a year.
Yeah. And the honest, my gut feeling is that supposedly it's okay with HUD. And Sandy felt it is. To me, it's one of those things like it's too good to be true.
I've been counseled, just don't say anything, wait for them.
Oh, okay. Asking forgiveness is easier than permission. Okay.
Obviously, what this does is it lets us earn more money
Yeah.
on the 50,000
Yeah.
as supplemental
Yeah.
as opposed to being in the GOR.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. Yep. So.
Just
so-
wait.
Oh,
wait,
more.
wait.
Okay. But wait.
Wait, that was John Lent's idea. Everybody needs to know that he came up with that brain idea. So yay, John.
Okay. So so basically today there's two options on the table.
Isn't this study a snapshot in time of one time, and we do it every year? So I guess I don't understand why we want to put it in every year. Why can't we make that decision every year? So can someone explain that to me?
As treasurer, I would say that's a board decision that should be made every year, and that, as far as I can see, we would be.
I think that's
Just
true.
that
I think
We
it
just
makes
were
sense.
making some assumptions here.
yeah. I
And-
think you should see, I think that makes a lot of sense just to make that decision every year. It's early on. And if you go back to the other scenario at 120, 172, 120 for 30 years, that looks really good. So this is just the icing on the cake. If you can do that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if this answers your question, Sue, but the discussion that went along with that motion was that we intended to do this annually from the GOR.
But if you don't have to do it, you don't do it, right?
Could I just, I'll just quickly say this. I didn't look at the second option that closely because when I looked at the first option, it looked really good. So I thought, let's do it. But I don't have a vote, so never mind.
And as we get into this discussion, I want to point out a couple of other things. Those that know me, I've flown airplanes for 60 some odd years, and any airplane of any size has got an annunciator panel with various lights and some horns attached. Green is good, yellow is pay attention, and red is do something. If Steve was here, he would remind you that shortly after getting past this issue, we're starting the budget process. The budgets are due from the various committees that have got budget July 31st, so less than a couple of weeks from now. There are, and we mentioned it in a meeting on the 15th. There's some potential gotchas out there that we're going to have to deal with. One is this hail and wind damage on our property insurance. This is not an if, it's a when. We don't know what that's going to hit. It'll affect your HO6 more than anything else. But it nonetheless is there. We're in a process of, and those of you that are on the finance committee got the memo yesterday. Our meeting for the finance committee is next week, the 27th. We're looking at changing our agent to a different agent, keeping the same insurance that we have, because we just did renew, but the insurance will come due April of next year, and we're going to get a bump. Don't know how much. Ross had also indicated that we've got a possible hit with some of the concrete that needs to be repaired. All of that is going to hit. So what I'm trying to say is that, and again, never let you see you sweat. Not sweating right now, but I think this budget period is going to be a little tough for us to come up with a budget. Joe and I had talked before the meeting. There are some other subsidiary committees that are looking for a budget. We're going to look at that. Our intention is, and Steve sent me a note yesterday, is that we're going to start working meetings probably the first 3 weeks of August to get this started and get it done. This is the first step. We got to get past this so that we see whether or not that's going to affect our budgets going forward. Having said all of that, let's continue this discussion. And if there are any other questions of Dan on these scenarios, and then we'll move forward. I don't hear anything else. We've gone over the scenarios. The change the R&R to replace GE with Whirlpool. Marianne, when does that go actually in effect? Is that it's now?
It was approved by the
It's-
board at the
so
last meeting.
it's
so
going
in effect,
forward.
yes.
Okay. We're down to the point where the rubber meets the road. Are we ready and sufficiently educated to make a motion to take one of these scenarios, approve them, amend them, and send them to the board with our approval?
I move that we use the first example that was presented today. To update our draft number 2, scenario 1 for our current assessment and for going forward for the next year.
Got a motion. I'm looking for a second. Second. Okay, any discussion on this? Everybody fully understand what Sue just made. So this is what we will take this scenario and send it to the board requesting that this be implemented. Go ahead, Steve.
I just wanted to kind of interject here that I believe that scenario number 2 more correctly reflects our snapshot in time.
And that's the recommendation on the floor right now. Right, yeah. Which is scenario 1.
Where the annual contribution stays at 172 for 30 years.
Right.
Yes, okay, that we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
I just want to throw one suggestion. The 172.
Scenario 2 currently reflects our intention.
Whose intention?
The intention we made when we agreed to start pulling money from the GOR
Oh, okay.
and putting it in our intention.
You say microphone, please.
Scenario 2 reflects what we voted for and what our intention was going forward, which was to every year on an annual basis, withdraw $50,000 from the GOR and deposit it in our supplemental reserve account. That's our snapshot in time is that. No, that was number two.
Yeah,
shows
yeah,
that.
these are mislabeled and under
Draft two is.
Could I ask a
draft
question
two.
here?
Yeah, yeah. It's
I have a
called-
question. Does it really matter for us right now?
It doesn't change anything with respect to the fees. Both of them are predicated on the contribution to the supplemental reserve. That might be the only variable, and that's the same in both scenarios. It is.
Right.
Your snapshot in time is, our intention is to do this on an annual basis. So for this to be an accurate account, you have to go with that scenario.
But let me throw the wrench into the works. This report is incorrect if we're gonna go to, because I estimated removing the $40,000. So this isn't even worth the paper right now it was written on. So
Can you imagine what it's going to look like
Well,
when you change the
that's-
50,000?
I think you'll be so overfunded
Right.
that yeah,
It's,
Yep. Yep. Yeah. yeah, it's changeable. So as time goes on, but still, I think it's just, you're looking at that, you're gonna see this huge amounts of money in there. People are gonna look at that and go, well, why are we putting all that
Yeah.
money into there? So, but to your point, I get it. Yeah, it's too bad I get bad info. Sandy, no.
I think I would rather, I'd rather see, do the 50,000.
Yeah,
Let's see
right.
what that looks like.
But I would like
It-
to suggest one consideration before you vote, and that is to add a line in there of a contingency. Now, some buildings pick a number, $20,000. So every year there's 20,000 contingency. It's not allocated to anything, but it is for things that come up that are unseen. I don't inflate it. It just stays at 20 each year. And if you know that as the year goes on, you got 20,000 in there that's not allocated to go to any, and so it won't hurt anything in the study. If you don't use it, that's the great thing, carries on to the next year. So just something to think about.
I think Steve has a valid point. As the secretary of the finance committee, we made a or maybe it was even, yes, we made the recommendation that the 50,000 be transferred from the general operating reserve to the supplemental. It was a budget neutral movement of money. I agree with Dan. This doesn't reflect that. So I don't think people are going to look at it and say, oh, you're throwing $50,000 more into there as if you're adding it to their present fees. You're not. You're just, the whole objective of the movement was to give us control of that money. That was the motive for doing it. Okay. Is that clarifying? So to me, if you're going to vote on this, you need to see what it says in black and white. Because I'm having trouble just as a recording secretary saying, well, what are you really voting on at this point? Because I don't think you can see it. And even though these numbers may look really, really big, they'll look wonderful. We haven't put more money into the whole system, into all of our pots. We've just putting it in different pots. So you're not adding any expenditure or increasing any fees to do that.
Are we comfortable where we are, or do we need to have Dan trim this up and have one more meeting? I think we know where we want to be. Go ahead, Harvey.
And I think we have to have another meeting because of it.
Okay.
So
agree
we
with
all have
Harvey,
the
yeah.
same thing.
You're essentially voting on a pig in a poke, we're voting on something that we haven't seen. And again, it's going to be shocking when we see what 50,000 is going to do, because that's 40,000 more than what Dan has in there currently.
There was a question that came up, and I actually forwarded to another member on whether or not this was posted on the member's website. It has not been intentionally, because I didn't know what was going to happen here. What we could do is have Dan run this scenario, get it to me, I'll forward it to the group. If it is sufficient, I'd ask Sandy to post it so the membership can take a look at it, and then schedule. And I had put on this to set dates for a future reserve study meeting. So I anticipated that we may not get through this, so we could do that, downstream. So again, what I'm suggesting is that we have Dan clean this up, end up with one scenario, get this passed to the committee. If everything is fine with that, no, there are no changes, have Sandy post it, and then schedule a meeting sometime in August to trim it up and get it done. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, we'll have to deal with that. Okay. Sue has withdrawn her motion. So, and maybe to formalize this, let's have someone make a motion to articulate just what I said. That we're going to direct Dan to give us a new scenario. We'll forward it to the board for consideration. Everything fine, get it posted. And I'm looking for a motion for that.
So move.
Okay. We have first and a second. Everybody understand what we're doing here? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered. One more scenario.
One question. Dan, did you change the appliances to Whirlpool in your?
I don't recall. Did somebody send me the numbers? I mean, there they are. I'll confirm that then. Thank
So you can update that.
I think I did, but this looks familiar. But I will double check. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that amounts to about a 10 to 12% savings. So
Wow. Can I have this or? Okay. All right. I'll make sure that's included in that. In fact, I'll just double check on the other. On the first option. Okay. I can have that done. I could have that done just sitting here, but I don't want to. I want to get home and mow my dead lawn. No. But no, wait, I can have that like this evening or so. Keep it moving.
Okay. I think we're down to the point where we know where we're going. Dan will get that. I'll get it forwarded to you. Let's go ahead and look at dates. I've got calendar up. If we were looking at the I guess the question is how quickly we want to do it. We've got a finance committee on the 27th. We try to do these meetings on the Wednesday. Next Wednesday is the 26th. That's relatively quick, a week from today. Can we do that? Does that work for everybody? I'll confirm that Can you easily look at the room and see if it's available a week from today, Jennifer? Okay, as we're working on that, any other discussion from the committee members? Any discussion from anybody here in the audience? I'm not sure how to get the people on Zoom to take a look. Go ahead, Joe. Okay. Let's go ahead and book that at 10 o'clock on the 26th. Okay. Okay. Back to Zoom. Somebody knows how to operate that. Can we look and see if anybody wants to raise their hand? We'll see if there's anybody that has a question on Zoom. Okay. Okay. Apparently we don't have that. So I will look for a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you for all of your work. Was relatively quickly. It would not too much pain. And so we'll look to Dan, and I'll get that out as quickly as I can. And we'll see you a week from today on the 26th. Thank you. Just to confirm, that is the 10 o'clock on the 26th. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, thank you.